boy, oh boy, isn't it funny how changing a coach and changing a quarterback can change the entire attitude and outlook of a fan base?
Yeah, that was a different look we had there in the second half. One of inspired hope and confidence, it seemed like. Unlike what we saw on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
Which
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you about the play of Luke Doty because I compared it on my show again. You talked about, we talked about a few weeks ago. You talked about Steven Garcia though, and kind of the energy that injected into the team. You know, when you were there, when Garcia was a young guy, and you kind of felt like he was the next dude. But of course, you had Chris Smelly, you had Blake Mitchell, but you always felt like when you inserted Steven in the lineup, there was just this new sense of energy. It was infectious to the entire team. And again, humble brag, as close as I was, you could see body language. You could see how guys react. And that was a different thing for me. I thought it was really, really cool to be that up close and personal and see that. And, no disrespect to Colin Hill, whatever. He's done the most he can do with the abilities he has and what he has to work with on offense. But you could see in that first half, again, 68 yards of offense, Alex. 68 yards of offense. I saw guys on the sideline on defense kind of shrugging their shoulders, rolling their eyes, dejected a little bit. And I totally understood. Listen, for me, watching the game as a fan, it was boring. All week people said, oh, the season's a wash. The season's a wash. It felt that way. That's how you felt. Like, man, that's kind of how these two teams are both playing. Sloppy game on both sides. But injecting Luke Doty in the lineup in the second half, I sat up in my chair. I sat on the edge of my seat. I thought you saw this entire football team really come to life. Again, your defense pitches a second half shutout. You don't win the football game, but that was the best your offense looked all game. Again, I feel like it's really simple to talk about the impact Luke Doty had because I think you have to be blind to not see it. But just talk about what you saw from Luke Doty, the type of impact he has. Again, there were at least 3 or 4 plays, Alex, I know you would count as well, that the play was dead. With Colin Hill, it's 110% a sack, and Doty's able to evade a guy, make a guy miss, scramble for 8 yards, scramble for 10 yards, scramble for 15 yards. That is the difference, and I think that's what everybody's been talking about as far as the upside that the true freshman brings to this offense and this team.
100%. And two, I think it adds. I mean, so you have that added element to where he's a threat to run with the ball. So you have to account for that at some point on defense. So that pulls an extra defender out of the secondary that's got to stay with him, or an extra linebacker that's got to stay with him. And two, on those scramble plays, that's a lot of the times where you get receivers open for big plays. And this may have just been bias on my part watching it, but it just seemed like, we didn't have any drops in the second half, did we?
Not that I can really recall. No, not that stand out. Not that stand out. No.
Well, I say that I think Adkins dropped one, but now that again, it just adds an extra element that Colin Hill can't bring to the table, and yeah. I think that's huge for us, especially if we're gonna have to play without Shi Smith next week.
Yeah, which you probably will
because you don't have that dependable number one.
Yeah, he's in concussion protocol, so I'd highly doubt Shi will be available this weekend, or probably maybe even the rest of the season, because that's a guy, he's already accepted his invite to the Senior Bowl. He's trying to get drafted or get signed or whatever, and I'd probably imagine at this point, unless he's just 110% recovered, I probably would assume he's going to protect himself, which, again, he's given you all he's got this year. Can you really fault the guy? But and I will say, Alex, being that close to the field, yet again, humble brag, he took a shot. That walking off the field looked like he didn't know where he was. So we'll see what happens. But, the concussion protocol, we'll see if he can come out of it. But I want to ask you this. And, again, I love to and hate to draw these comparisons because I don't want to put this much on the kid. But I have to ask, how much does Luke Doty remind you of a young Connor Shaw? I just feel like they're like the same. The skill set is very, very similar. You can't deny that.
It is. No, it's the exact same kind of skill set where you're a good enough passer to be dangerous, and the scrambling ability and being able to throw on the run like he can just adds an extra element to anything that you're doing on offense, and it just puts the defense in tougher spots where that's just not going to happen if you've got Colin in there. And for example, if you take Shi Smith out of the game, you're able to blanket are the receivers. He's got to stand there. He's got to dump it to a running back, or he's going to get sacked, or he's got to throw an incompletion. You put somebody like a Doty or Shaw in there, and now all of a sudden pressure comes in. They can roll out, and now you're asking that secondary to cover those receivers for an extra 2, 3, 4 seconds. And that's where you can get those big pops in the passing game when you have a busted play. And we don't have a quarterback on the roster that can do that other than Doty and Dak Joyner.
Yeah,
and so
I thought you saw him throw out of a lot of sacks too, like throwing on the run for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's like that danger without, having, 2 go-to receivers is a huge help to the offense. And 2, going forward, assuming he's going to be the starter, that's going to be a big help to Kevin Harris too, because you start running some of these zone read plays, and now they got to count for 2 guys and not just 1. And so it just, like we've talked about since week 1 on what we want to see and revolutions in the play calling, like this adds all those elements to it where you're not going to get stymied nearly as much. And that it worked fine, for the first couple of weeks of the year. And then you kind of hit a roadblock where you weren't able to, feature anybody but Shy. And now, Shy's out of the game. Now you've got to figure out a way, okay, well, how do I scheme this up the best I can? And Luke's going to give us the best opportunity to do that.
For sure. And you talk about, I agree with you. I think no other quarterback. And it'd be interesting to see, because again, we're talking on a Monday. So the Tuesday, this show comes out Tuesday. That presser is going to be happening at 12:30. I mean, Alex, if Mike Bobo trots Colin Hill back out there as a starter, this fan base is going to revolt. I mean, am I wrong? Like, I just
no,
which they should, right? I think we all agree no other quarterback or other than number 4 should be taking the snaps. I just hate his first career start might come against the Georgia Bulldogs. Hey, welcome to the SEC though. Welcome to the SEC. You signed up for it, right?
Sure, but who doesn't hate that is Luke Doty.
Yeah, right.
This is the stuff you dream about when you're playing high school football or you're playing tag football in the backyard with your friends. It's getting to go out there and start a game like this. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to have butterflies because everybody does, but I assure you he is not going to shrink from that moment because it's something he's been dreaming about his whole life.
How much, Alex, I'm going to put you in the shoes of the next head coach for South Carolina, and we all know at this point, from everything we've heard, it's going to be an offensive head coach, right? I expect South Carolina to go to the spread, go to a more up-tempo, a more modern offense. And the ironic thing, Alex, about Saturday night and the way it went down, walking to the stadium, I was telling the people I was with, I really feel like this is setting up for Luke Doty to be the guy going into next season because I fully expect it's going to be that style of offense. I know you'd agree with that. I mean, it's going to fit a guy like Luke Doty so perfectly, and I think the next head coach is going to be competent enough to where he's not going to move a fast quarterback to wide receiver just because he's fast. So I think they're going to look at that. There won't be as much roster mismanagement. But, the way it went down, I'll put you in the shoes of the new head coach or even the new offensive coordinator. How much would you be salivating at the opportunity to work with a guy like Luke Doty? I mean, that's just got to be a dream. That's a real selling point, I think, for the next head coach. Like, bro, we've got a guy that's going to fit the exact scheme you're running.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be because it gives you more than anything else. It kind of gives you an idea of what's sitting there. So, when you're having these conversations and trying to think like, how do we want to attack this from a recruiting standpoint? What do we want to do from an offensive setup standpoint? Like, what's sitting there because you've seen the tape on it. And, if you leave them on the sidelines, then it's kind of up in the air on, okay, well, what is this really going to look like? And now you actually have film to go back and review and look at and figure out, yeah, this is what he does well. This is what we need to work on. I can build something to this. Which again, and I know we've talked about this ad nauseum. I just sincerely hope that's what walks in the door is somebody that's like, hey, I'm going to build around
the talent, not try to just instill my system no matter who's on the roster.
Correct.
Yeah.